Here to talk more about the use of drones in warfare is Thomas Lynch. He's a fellow at the National Defense University here in Washington, D.C. And Thomas, these news numbers, are they credible?
Mike, thanks for having me here tonight, and I'm delighted to talk to you from my perspective as a fellow, as you said, at National Defense University, not as an official representative of the U.S. government, Department of Defense, or my employer at the university.
Good qualifier.
But having said that, I do spend a lot of time looking at these numbers and looking at the balance sheet, if you will, on the tough decisions to use force in these circumstances, largely in areas, whether it be in Pakistan, Yemen, or Somalia, and indeed in Afghanistan as well, I should mention, where we believe there are terrorists and terrorists of international affiliation hanging out, developing plots. Here, I think the numbers from independent agencies over the last several years, a couple that are here in D.C. and a couple overseas, kind of say the following about Pakistani strikes. We're in the range of about 340 to 350 that have occurred over time, the last decade. In those strikes, independent estimates are about 2,500 known militants, affiliates, or associates have been killed, and somewhere around 150 to 200 civilians have been struck. Now, just to put that in comparison, there were more than 400 confirmed civilian deaths in the precision bombing strikes in Sarajevo and in the Yugoslav conflict in 1999. So, you know, if force is to be used, one of the questions is to what effect precision? Not perfection, but precision. And in this case, while lamentable, the argument can be made that there is less civilian damage and civilian casualties with these types of strikes than there has been in other circumstances.
But this Pakistani number, much lower than the numbers you're talking about right there.
Correct. So, you know, where that comes from, not exactly sure. And that gets to the issue of, you know, who's confirming what on the ground. The sources are not perfect. That's why I say it's probably a range here, but that is a bit of a low number. Likewise, though, international groups, I think, are providing a very high-end estimate to make the point that this is not antiseptic.
Right, right. Well, let me ask you this. The Pakistani leaders have been pressing the United States. These drone strikes have got to stop. Obviously playing to a domestic audience. Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif was just at the White House, and here's what he had to say. I want you to listen.
Pakistan and the United States have a strong ongoing counter-terrorism cooperation. We have agreed to further strengthen this cooperation. I also brought up the issue of drones in our meeting, emphasizing the need for an end to such strikes.
I'm confident that working together, we can achieve a goal that is good for Afghanistan, but also helps to protect Pakistan over the long term.
Here's the interesting thing, though. There was an article in the Washington Post last week which said the Pakistanis are on board. They're actually identifying some of the targets and that sort of thing. So we've got these two competing narratives. Which one's accurate?
I think, Mike, that it's important to note that there's elements of truth in each side of the story. I think Prime Minister Sharif's appeal is heartfelt and reflects the majority of Pakistanis who would like to see these strikes ended. On the opposite side, though, the Americans have worked for a long time, our military and our intelligence agencies, with Pakistani civilian leadership, military and intelligence agencies, to get them to take decisive action against groups in Western Pakistan with their military or with their assets. And through a combination of stated and unstated arrangements, I believe, and I think many believe, there's been a loose agreement with the previous civilian government prior to Nawaz Sharif's to go ahead and execute many of these strikes because Pakistan was either not able to or not willing to risk the blowback from those kinds of strikes. So herein we have an issue of transparency and political transparency going back and forth. And I think that's kind of where the things become murky. If the Pakistani civilian government is authorizing these, then how can its military be unaware? And if its military is aware, how can its military not take the actions to shoot down drones, which are very defenseless? And I think I've talked to Pakistanis in the military who would tell you, well, you know, we don't shoot down the assets of our allies. Well stated and well spoken, but there still is this lack of transparency here. And I think, if anything, if Nawaz's appeal can get both his government, the military in Pakistan, and our government to be more forthcoming in what's actually going on here, I think that'll be a step in a positive direction.
Well, as they say, the first casualty of war is the truth. I guess it's all pretty murky and rather gray. But Thomas Lynch, thank you for your perspective. Certainly appreciate it.
Thank you very much.